my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello, and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and man, I'm really excited. I'm going to be sharing with you a recording from the Just Be Social Club. This was actually, I should say, anybody that is new here doesn't know what the Just Be Social Club is. Just Be is my wellness brand. And we have a mastermind group called the Just Be Social Club. We actually have two groups that we've done. We wrapped up one at the end of last year, and we're in the midst of our second group. But it's a mastermind group of like-minded people who come together just with the idea of like personal growth and wanting to do better for themselves and their community, and just have a safe space to kind of grow together, right? And that's what we're creating with the Just Be Social Club. So one of the things that we do for current members and past members is every other month we have a what we call an expert call, right, where you can hop on a Zoom with us and we'll have a different guest and I'll interview them and we'll talk about their story and you can ask them questions. And basically all this is done with the intention of seeing somebody who looks like you or comes from your background, has a similar story, sharing their story, and humanizing the experience of not only chasing your dreams but also just living, right? And I think that's the beauty of it. So this is a call we had with Eliana Reyes, who's an incredible individual. I've had her on the podcast before. I think it was last season, but we actually dove a bit deeper into her story. Eliana works in media. She's a showrunner. She's also been an actress, a model. She's a filmmaker now with a documentary about her family and her father who was incarcerated. So she has a lot going on. And a lot of this is really just her having an idea and then figuring it out along the way. And I think that's so incredibly inspiring. And I know everybody that was on the call with her got a lot out of this. So I wanted to share it, especially as we're getting ready to launch the new version of the Just Be Social Club at the end of this month in April. Looking like I believe it's April 29th is what we're looking at, or April 30th. I think it's April 30th, a Tuesday. Where we're going to be opening the group up to even more people, and it's going to be a lot more streamlined process. Before we had kind of done it, via Zoom, invite only, and it's been amazing. But I want to just keep creating this and building it out. And the idea of this is really creating community where we can have a safe space to share emotions, feelings, stories, but at the same time, a place where you can go to network and engage with other people from the community, where you can get, content on demand that might be relevant towards what you're going through, as well as having like the sort of live monthly meetup that we do, where I'll usually talk about one of the, 4 pillars of conscious living and just talk about life in general, where people can, ask questions, pick each other's brain, having the expert calls, all those different things. Like, we're really trying to build this into a community where it's like a one-stop shop where you can get, your soul advice. You can maybe find your creative soulmate, right? Find a partner in creativity, or even just if you're working on something, getting real-time feedback from people, a safe space to share what you're working on and getting people's advice and their take and things like that. I think there's so much value in that. So that's what we're building with the Just Be Social Club. If you want to be put on our email list for when we launch it, and I don't have your email yet, you can just DM me on Instagram at DJ Dramos, and just send me your email, and I'll add it to the list so we can send it to you when we open that up. We really want to just build this incredible community that is just like a one-stop shop for everything that you need, and to surround yourself with people who look like you, come from your background, and are just trying to improve their life, make their life better as a whole. So that's the goal with the Just Be Social Club. So I wanted to share this conversation we had, I think it was last month, I want to say, and I was really inspired and energized after. I know we got a lot of really good feedback, kind of diving into Eliana's story, so I wanted to share it on here. Also, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, I'm wearing a sweatshirt, as you can. Yep, there you go. You see it. We just dropped our new core merchandise merch line. I hate saying that. I hate the word merchandise, but I love it. It says "BU." They're like beautifully embroidered sweatshirts, and hats as well that I feel really passionate about. I just think it's a great message to be like walking. I feel like a walking billboard of like positivity when I wear it, which I love. And it's been really inspiring for me just creating content around it and things like that. So that's all out. justb.nyc is the website if you want to check that out. We do ship internationally. And I think that's it for housekeeping here. I always get the like feeling like I should keep talking, like, I want to make sure I'm adding value, but I'm not going to keep babbling, wasting your time. We're going to get into the conversation that I had with Eliana Reyes. Just amazing stuff. I think you're going to be very inspired by this conversation, so I want to make sure I shared it with you here on the podcast. So without further ado, let's get into it in our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente! We'll just kind of start getting into it. I think Brandon and I really wanted to have Eliana hop on. And by the way, this is Eliana Reyes. She's a actor, a host, a model, a filmmaker, a jack of all trades, just doing a whole lot
doing it all.
Yeah. Doing so much. Brent, I think I might have clicked float out of the room by accident. So if you want to hit her up, if that was me or her, but I think I clicked the wrong button. But yeah, Eliana's doing so many different things, and I really wanted to have her come on because I think getting started is the hardest part. And a lot of times we be talking ourselves out of shit just because maybe it's the first time we're doing it and we think that we are unworthy of doing said thing, right? And I was really sort of inspired when you and I talked. I had you on the podcast last year. And you've been working on this project amongst all the other things you do, but like the labor of love, this documentary, Vida Nueva, right? And it's about your father.
Yeah.
And the idea of a documentary is obviously just fucking wild. I think for anybody who's even done it before, it's a labor of love.
So much work.
Yeah, but like this is your first foray, and you kind of just like went with this feeling, right? Of like, I need to tell this story. And I think for a lot of people on this call, we have a lot of people who are creative, or a lot of people who struggle with perfectionism, and myself included. And sometimes it holds me back from really going in on an idea and exploring it. So let's start there with Vida Nueva. I mean, first and foremost, for anybody not familiar, just kind of give us a quick, a couple lines of what it's about, and then sort of this choice you made in going into the idea of filmmaking, and just figuring it out along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Vida Nueva is a docu-film about me and my siblings reunited with my father after he was released from serving 26 years in prison. And he was deported to Dominican Republic. So, we filmed part of it here in Los Angeles. I have one sibling here in Los Angeles, and I have other ones in New York. So, we just decided when we found out that he was going to come out, we decided, okay, let's tell this story, but not just about this re-encounter, but also about the reintegration, right? Like, we're adults now. How do we show the story of like, this is what long-term incarceration did to our lives and our families. Here's how it impacted us. Also, here we are reintegrating. And then what does forgiveness and moving forward look like? And it seems really simple because it's really just the story of a family. But I know that me and my siblings, we're not the only ones impacted by long-term incarceration. For whatever the reason is that someone goes in, like, it's something that specifically affects Black, Brown, Latino communities. So I wanted to show that. And I also wanted to show immigration through the lens of Dominicans, because we often see immigration in a certain light, but there's other populations that are also impacted by immigration and deportation in the U.S. And so I wanted to show that as well. So it really is a story about, it's a love letter to forgiveness, really. That's what it is.
I love that. I love that.
Not that we were like upset, not that we're like, we hate our father, because we have a good relationship with him. We always did. We maintained as much communication as you can maintain with your father while he's in prison. It's 26 years. But really just forgiveness of everything, because I was even upset at myself a lot of times for like not knowing how to manage this relationship or not knowing how to be there, or but it's like, who
Mm-hmm.
does?
Yeah.
There's not a rule book for like, here's how you
Right.
deal with your parent being in jail for 26 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a long story, but that's pretty much what it is. I like to call it kind of a love story to a love letter to forgiveness.
That's beautiful. I
Family.
love that. Yeah, I mean, anybody who's just hopping on, Eliana is talking about a documentary that she's working on about her father who was incarcerated, and the relationship and sort of reuniting with her siblings and her father after the fact. And I want
Yeah.
to like really break down though, aside from the story itself, you taking this project upon yourself, right? You getting this sort of creative idea in your head and then just like running 100 miles an hour towards it, essentially, right? I know you like obviously you do a lot of different things. You've been working in entertainment and media for a while now, but this
Yeah.
is a whole nother animal. So set the tone for me, your skill set before getting into making this project. Like what were your qualifications that made you think that you could produce an entire documentary, right? What were you, on paper, what
Uh,
made sense?
right. You know what's crazy? I'm audacious, right? I'm an Aries,
Yeah.
I'm a dreamer. I would have done it with or without qualifications, to be
Yeah.
honest. I would have been like, this is what y'all gonna get. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not about y'all, really. It's about me and the healing
Yeah.
process that is for me and
Mhm.
my family. And it's about honoring this calling that I received. So for me, filmmaking does come from a very spiritual place. It doesn't matter. Anything that
Yeah.
I make, it comes from like something like pulls me to be like, you have to do this. And I might be like,
Mhm.
nah, like I'm not ready, but it's like, we're
Yeah.
gonna do this. So, I think what I didn't realize, because I spent a lot of time in Minneapolis before I moved out to LA. So part of the reason how I ended up in Minneapolis was because my father was in jail. So we ended up in the Midwest.
Mhm.
I worked for years in banking and project management. And I didn't know that those project management skills would
Mhm.
translate into everything you need as a filmmaker to put together the pieces of the ship and also
Yeah.
to get it to move forward.
Mhm.
Um, so, and also being a storyteller, since I was young, I've always been, whether it's writing stories, performing stories, writing songs. I come from a spoken word background, so really crafting stories and getting into the the necessity of storytelling, that's always been in my nature. So I
Mhm.
literally just had a moment where I was like, okay, I'm a producer at LATV. I've done this independent, no budget short film series. I've done spoken word. I've done this. I've done that. Almost everything that I do revolves around this identity of who I am.
Mhm.
And who I am is a direct impact of this man being taken away from my life, right?
Right.
So I was like, how can I call myself a storyteller if I don't tell the biggest story of my life?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the impetus. Honestly, it was just kind of like, I have to do this. Did I know how difficult doing a feature length
Yeah.
documentary was going to be? No, I didn't, because I had done mini documentaries.
Right.
What I can tell you that I'm very confident about, I know how to. I remember being like, I can do this because I know what it's like to manage several moving pieces
Mhm.
all in the same direction, you
Mm.
know? So I knew that like my my producer background, my project management background was going to help this come through, but also I knew that I had people in place that believe in me, that the moment I called and I was like, yo, I need a DP, yo, I need an AD, yo, I
Yeah.
need an EP, that they were going to be like, let's do it, because they
Yeah.
believed in me just from stuff that I had done before. So I really didn't ask permission.
Yeah.
I kind of was just like, this needs to happen. It was more like, what do I need to make this happen? And I'm the type of person where I'm like, you got a camera? You good at this? You good at this? All right, let's go. Pack your bags. You
Yeah.
know what I
Right.
mean? So that's really how it was. We didn't have much time to think because we found out that he was getting released from the BOP system like just a week or so before. So
Mm.
the whole filming LA, that was very like last minute. And then throughout the whole process, the U.S. Marshal, they kept changing the dates of when he was going to get deported. We didn't know what the process was going to be like. So everything was very like, we're just in this for this ride. And it was a lot of anxiety. But most of what I banked on was my my love for storytelling and my desire to have to tell the story. The
Mm-hmm.
skills came in kind of after, because I was
Sure.
just like, how am I going to make this happen? Okay, well, this is no different than any other project that I've managed, so, and that was it,
Yeah.
you kind of just take it step by step, and where I really fleshed it out was when I did the creative deck for my team. When I sat down and I was like, okay, this is what I want to capture here in LA. This is what I want to capture in Dominican Republic. I had no idea what Dominican Republic was going to look like. I had no idea if we were going to be there the day that he came out of the government building, if we were just going to like randomly run into him, if I wanted to stage it, I had no idea. I just knew in my mind, I had this vision of like, I have to get this embrace. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like, I have to get this first embrace of all of us embracing each other, because even though we went to visit him, we never all were together at the same time during the 26 years.
Sure.
So I just kind of imagined it. And then I kind of worked backwards. When I imagined these things, I was like, okay, what do I need to do to make this vision come to life? And then I kind of worked my way back.
Yeah, you
But
go ahead.
qualification-wise, girl ain't go to film school or nothing.
Right.
It's just, yeah.
But I love what you said when you started, where you were saying, like, first and foremost, this is for me more than anything else, right? And I think that's what so many of us get lost upon, because our mind immediately goes to the finished product, right? And
Right.
that's where we begin to start second guessing, or what is this person gonna think? Oh my God, it has to look this way or else it's fucking awful, right? And first
Yep.
and foremost, it has to be something for you. That's the only way you're ever going to be able to push through all the trials and tribulations of it. It's the only way that you're actually going to be able to follow through, right? And more importantly, even if this becomes the biggest fucking documentary the world has ever seen, like, it first
Yeah.
and foremost has to fill your heart, right? Like, that's the most important, that above any other accolade.
That part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think even if then the worst case scenario happens, at the very least, you went out on this journey and got to scratch your creative itch and challenge yourself and have fun along the way of challenging yourself in a new way. And the process in itself of even just doing this project and going after it,
Yeah.
you've grown as a human being, I'd imagine, right? You've learned so much along the way. And I'm sure it was fun, as just as much as it was stressful, but there was something fulfilling about it. I'm sure. And I feel like that's like where I'm at right now. I like to drive home with people also, is like, let's not always get caught up on the finished product. Let's also realize that even if this
Yeah.
isn't my like ticket to financial freedom, if I'm enjoying it along the way, then that's still valuable as well. And that's something I kind of like really
Right.
try to hone in on,
I look at it as like, listen, we don't second guess ourselves when we work for other people, right? When you're looking for a job,
Mhm.
right? If you really want to become or whatever, you're quick to take an internship that doesn't pay you to get to where you're going. I
Right.
look at it the same way. Like, your first big film, it might not be a blockbuster. That's fine. Is it going to get distribution? The goal is yes. If it doesn't, the story is still told. The story is still
Hmm.
accessible for those that need to see it. And the
Right.
truth is that, you know, this is something, especially, for me, it's something that I felt like, okay, this is calling me, like, I need to do this. At that point, I'm not worried about um not that I'm not worried about feedback, but at the end of the day, it's like, how are you going to tell me when this is my story, right? This is the story of me and
Hmm.
my family.
Right.
So whatever the end product is, number one, as a director, you have to stay faithful to your vision. Because if
Hmm.
you don't, especially with documentaries, you don't have a script that you're never going to be able to get out of those lines. A documentary can go many different directions at any
Right.
point. You can have an epiphany while you're walking away from it and come back and it looks completely different.
Sure.
So you really have to trust, like, this is how I feel when I watch this. This is me honoring the vision that I had. This is me honoring the cadence that I wanted to have. This is me honoring the sequencing and what I believe makes sense and how to present the story to you guys. And for me, it just became one of those things where it was like, it might not be for everybody, and that's okay. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like, I want to honor the relationship that I know we have with my father. I want to honor my brothers being able to open up because they had never done that in the past. And I want to honor just this calling of like, we all decided, okay, yeah, let's do it, you know? And that's all that matters to me. You know, it's a lonely place to be sometimes.
Sure.
Because you want everyone to like your work and you're like, oh, I hope people whatever. But at the end of the day, when you're doing it independently, it's different, right? If you're creating for a studio and you have an EP from the studio, that's a whole different ballgame, right? You're also on a different timeline. You kind of have to do it at their standards. They want it to look a certain way, to feel a certain way. But this is like straight up like grassroots storytelling, you know? So other than you telling me like, hey, I think this shot looks a little blown out or this and this and that, even then, bro, that might be the only shot we had, because with documentaries, you have what you have, you know?
Right.
So it was like, I have to be okay with the fact that that moment when we saw my father for the first time and he was walking towards us, funny story, right? We set up, we had a red camera here, we had a Canon whatever over there, we had a Sony, and then the DP was in a handheld. And you want to know what the best footage is? The best footage is from the AD from behind my dad, walking behind him with her freaking iPhone. That's the best footage. Because from the front, you know what I'm saying? Like where we were meeting, it was kind of like a balcony, like a balcony or whatever. It was nighttime. We had literally just flown in that night and we didn't want to be like, oh, Pops, wait till tomorrow to see us.
Right.
We were like, no, bang, like, let's do this, you know? So we had limited lighting. We had only seen the villa in pictures. So we just kind of did what we had to do. Like an hour after we landed, we set everything up. But when I'm going through all the footage, as amazing as the red camera is, as amazing as everything is, the absolute most chilling shot is she just intuitively was like, I'm going to record this from the back just in case. And she was following him up the stairs. And then when he gets to the top of the stairs, you see his back, and then you see all of us lined up in a palm tree. And to me, that's the most beautiful shot. And it's from like an iPhone 12. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's part two of like, as a director, you can have all the vision and all the things that you think are going to happen, but you have to leave room for like things that you don't know are going to happen. I didn't know that Lorena was going to do that. And at the end of the day, that's the shot we ended up using for kind of this building up this moment of him coming up the stairs, and like when he finally gets to the top of the stairs and he sees us, you know. It's like stuff like that happens. And other things was like, I didn't know my brothers were going to open up the way that they did, you know. So emotionally, as a director, I wasn't prepared to take on talking to my brothers for the first time about how this emotionally and psychologically and just impacted them. So right on site, I had to figure out several different shooting, several different spots to do these interviews. It's a lot of unknowns, and you just got to roll with the punches. But again, it comes back to you trusting you,
right?
You know, and you knowing that like if you bet on yourself, there's no wrong way to do this, you know. And you're gonna spend a lifetime trying to figure out the right way to do it if you're trying to please everybody, and that's just impossible. So at the end of the day, it's really about honoring you and your vision and believing in yourself. That's why I say you got to be a little bit delusional.
Yeah, no,
a little crazy to be like,
you definitely do,
with
but
no money.
Right. Well, I think I like the idea of this whole thing in the literal sense is like great advice for filmmaking, but it's also an analogy for everything else in life, right? Where it's like you can prepare, but once you're thrown out there, you have to be okay with moving with the ebb and flow of whatever comes up naturally, whatever happens, right? The natural waves of life, the rhythm of life. And you have to be, you know, on your toes and figuring out the best possible thing that you can do in that situation, and be open to it not looking exactly as you had it planned in its head. Because I also think a lot of times we think that if it doesn't turn out exactly as planned, then that means it's bad. And that's not the case. Sometimes things turn out differently, but they're oftentimes even better, right? Like that shot you're talking about, is an analogy for that. Never did you think somebody should be shooting from behind, right? That was like a fluke that that this person just decided to do it. But like being open to that and just even watching the footage, like, all right, let me just check out what this iPhone footage looks like for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Like that led you to getting a better outcome than you intended. And I think that's a beautiful analogy for life and leaving ourselves open to all the stuff that we're creating or participating in. And I think even there was something else you mentioning about being a project manager, right? Because I'm big on the idea of also like when you're listening to people speak, even if their story doesn't resonate exactly, like not everybody here is a filmmaker, but pay attention to what you can take from it and apply to your life in the way that it makes sense, right? And it's the same way with skills we learn on the random ass jobs, be it our jobs as a teenager, whatever it was along the way,
Yeah.
experiences, all that shit can be applied to anywhere, right? Like me, operating in the entertainment business and running a business in entertainment, I can use those skills and go into real estate if I wanted to in some sort of way and still have a comprehensive understanding of business. Now, obviously, there's certain nuances and things like that, but to a degree, you
Mhm.
can apply those skills that you've learned in so many different places. And I think a lot of people sort of fail to maybe take information from places that are unexpected or don't
Yeah.
give themselves enough credit for maybe these skills that aren't as obvious, but that they definitely possess that, give them the ability to go do whatever else that they really feel like doing, if that makes sense.
Exactly. I think that all skills are transferable. Like I think a lot of
Mm,
people, because we're stuck on job titles, I always tell people, listen, when you're looking to change careers or when you're looking to change a job or whatever, it's not about the job title, it's about the skills. Like what are you
mhm.
doing at that job?
Yep.
Because 99% of the time it's gonna transfer. That's why I remember when I was at the Federal Reserve as a project manager deep in finance,
Yeah.
I remember fighting because they had me as like a business analyst or something like that. And I was like, I'm not a business analyst. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, we don't have another title. So I actually like advocated through HR. There's like a whole thing. There's like a whole new career path that was started because of me, because I was like, that title does not resonate with what I actually do. And that title is going to pigeonhole me, not
Yeah.
only mentally, but it's going to pigeonhole me like physically. Like if I put on LinkedIn, I'm a business analyst in
Yeah.
finance, there's no, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So we changed it to project coordinator, and then eventually it was project manager, and then project director, whatever. Um, but all those skills are transferable, and that's something that like I think is really important. And I think in anything that you do in life, because I feel like we're at a time where a lot of people are realizing like, where is my time going?
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people like we have to work, like we have to pay our bills,
Yeah.
and you might not be in a position where you could just be a full-time self-employed person. You have to have a job, or
Sure.
you have to do this. But if you want to get out of your industry, if you want to move around in different industries or do different things, really focus on just like, what are you doing every day? Like, what are the skills that you're using? Because that's what's going to make you stand out, whether it's in filmmaking, whether it's in music, whether it's, completely changing to a different company or a different industry.
Mhm.
Um, like I said, I had no idea that the way I was running things at the Fed, um, and the way I was having to communicate with people, the way that I was having to put together these proposals and all of it, like it's the same thing. You want a proposal? Well, when I submit, if I want to do an independent shoot, I have to submit a proposal to someone. I have to say, hey, here's my vision. Here's what I can do for you. Here's my team. Here's what they can do for you.
Mhm.
Here's our budget. When I'm creating a project, I have to make a creative deck. So, those skills of like vision to paper, that synthesizing of information too, like
Mhm.
simple skill that I didn't know I had, right?
Yeah.
In the filmmaking process, I've been working close with the editor. So I'm the story producer as well of the documentary, which takes a lot of energy because you're going through all of the footage and you're figuring out, okay, from this time code to this time code. Then from that time code, I want you to go to this footage and go from this time code to that time code. And it's like taking this idea you have in your mind visually and translating it into numbers and then putting it
Mhm.
into an Excel sheet
Yeah. Yeah.
so that the editor on his end can then go through the footage on his end and literally cut those time codes and start piecing together the sequence.
Mhm.
And I had no idea that I had that skill, and a lot of it came from the work I did at the Fed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so I always tell people, like, never underestimate or never regret the time that you spent. Listen, us millennials, we didn't know that things were possible, right? Like, the world was presented to us in a certain way, and now we're like, oh, I could do this, like.
Right.
So a lot of us are kind of like, wait a minute, I don't have to sit here and, like, you know, wait till I've worked somewhere for 40 years to then start living my life. So I'm really big on telling people, like, don't regret the time that you spent doing something that, you know, maybe you weren't happy doing, or maybe that you didn't know, you know, like you don't know how that job or how those skills are going to help you get to the next level of where you're actually supposed to be. It's all interconnected. Like,
yeah, no, 100%. And even I also love what you're like, you knew about it like a week in advance. Like, okay, we got a week where we're gonna just start setting all this shit up. And I think that's like that. So you basically in that moment finding out I have a week to set all this up, you're put at a very significant sort of fork in the road. You can either say, I don't have the time to set this up the way I want to. That's not right for right now. We're gonna have to put this project off. It's just not meant to be, right? Or you take the other path you said, and you're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna figure out as much as I possibly can because I'm want to do this. I'm not going to lose that, you know. And then from there the momentum builds. I mean, take me into that point, because I think a lot of people, I think a lot of times we don't realize opportunities are going to present themselves in some of the most uncomfortable manners. You know, like it's going to be like, this is your shot. It's not how you planned it to be. It feels like chaos, and dive in or lose this opportunity, basically. And that's your choice. And a lot of people succumb to fear at times, end up losing on opportunities. And we've all been there in different aspects of our lives. But I want to know, like, in that moment you're going through your mind that made you actually take the other, fork in the road and actually just be like, fuck it, I'm going to try and figure this out in the next week. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. You know, a lot of it is surrendering. It sounds crazy because there's a physical element of, like, I have to go do this, but there's a mental element of surrendering. So the other option is rooted in fear and perfectionism. You know, this option is rooted in, I'm going to love myself regardless of what this outcome is, and I'm going to do this regardless of what it looks like. So it's not up to me what it looks like. I'm the vessel to get this done. I just have to put one foot in front of the other. So that's really how I looked at it. And to be completely honest, before I did the creative deck, I didn't know, like, what is this going to look like? And I thought it was going to be a short documentary, because I was like, we could go with, I had literally bought the new iPhone. I was like, we can go out there. We could do this on iPhones. Like, there's films and film festivals that are done on iPhones, you know? And my brother, he was like, nah, like, let's do it legit and this and this and that. And I was like, well, you got legit money? Because and I'm just lucky that I have people that either owed me favors or that really believed in me, and they hopped on a plane and met us in DR. It was kind of crazy. But I can tell you this, I didn't get the vision for how I wanted things to look and feel until the day that we got the call that he was actually released from the BOP system, which was December 23rd, 2023, right? That night I went home and I sat down and I dip and dabble in music or whatever, and a song just came to me. Literally, it just came to me, and I was like, I couldn't stop, and I just started writing a song. And then as I'm writing this song and I'm like singing the song into my laptop on GarageBand, I started to, with the song, I started to piece together the film. And what's really wild, and I don't know if this is just this wee woo manifestation thing or if this is actually something that I alchemized, is that the way that it ended up happening is exactly how I saw it when I was writing this song. And the song is the song that you hear when this big moment is happening. But we had already been filming in LA. At that point, I was just collecting footage.
Sure.
And I think that is that's a big part of documentaries, right? Is you have an idea of the story you want to tell, so you just start collecting footage. But really, the art happens in story producing. When you sit down and you go through the footage and you're like, okay, this would be good for this. This would be a good opening. This interview needs to go here. That person needs to talk after this person because this person is the precipice to that person's role in the story. And it really just was a process of like surrendering and working with what I had. So I was like, there's no way that I'm not going to put together a dope story if I don't get dope footage. So I just focused on getting dope footage.
Yeah.
And then I worried about the story telling me how I wanted to be told in my story producing time and post-production. And that's the type of surrendering I'm talking about, right? Like had I went in there with a very strict, like this needs to happen here and that needs to happen there. Number one, it would have, sorry to curse, it would have fucked with the energy of all of us coming together and like this organic moment that was happening, right? Even just us spending time together. Had I been so regimented and restricted, it would have added an unnecessary stress to the moment. But also, I feel like I would have missed out on a lot of things. Like, simple thing. One of my uncles, he's that uncle that always pops up at a barbecue with like friends, and you're like, who is this? Like, he's one of those. We're about to go film to El Campo. He hops in the car with a lady, and I'm like, come on, like, you don't have time for this. You know, we're like dealing with like daylight, and he, no, pero esta es la maestra de tu papá. And I was like, pussy. And she was my father's 6th grade teacher.
Wow.
She was in the car with her. So I was like, do you feel comfortable talking on camera? She was like, sí, a mí me encanta tu papá. Yo digo lo que tú quieras, like whatever you want, I'll say or whatever. So we did a little interview with this freaking 6th grade teacher who hadn't seen him, you know, but because my uncle, I don't even know how he ran into this lady, but she was in the car with us. She was in the van. So it's like, you know, had I not had the flexibility to just like do that or there were other moments where the DP, he would just kind of go off and he would like be like, oh, there's this really cool, you know, spot over here, or there's some kids playing on this riff over here. There's just so many magical moments that happen that weren't necessarily like pre-planned. I think that when you're telling a story, you do have to, I look at stories as like their own entity. I'm just a vessel to tell them, right? And so a lot of times for me, I let the story tell me how it wants to be told. And you do that by honoring the process. And a lot of people are obsessed with the output because all we see is output and they don't fall in love with the process. And creating is a very vulnerable, very personal process. And you have to be able to go through all of the steps. If I told you how many breakdowns I had through this process, how many fights I got into with my older brother, my brother, right? How many disagreements, how many arguments I've gotten into with my dad. You know, not just because I don't love him, but because I'm reintegrating this man into my life. You know what I'm saying? And I'm a grown-ass woman now. All while still trying to tell this story, and I would have to take a breath and come back to it. And then it would be like after a conversation or after I'd have one of these arguments or one of these like great conversations with one of my siblings, I'd be like, huh. And then I'd go back and I'd like sit in front of the footage, and then the footage would literally be like, I need to go here. And then I would just be like, boom, this needs to go here. This needs to go there. But it's weird because as a director, people think that you are like over managing everything and micromanaging everything. And you do, in a sense. You have to have a good handle on all of these moving parts that support the ship that you're steering. But at the end of the day, you also have to let the waves take the ship, because if you try to fight against the wave, we all know what happens. Like the ship is going to tip over. You know what I'm saying? So there is a art in even though directing is a very masculine energy job, there is a part of it that you have to embrace the very feminine piece of it, which is being in the flow and surrendering. And I think that applies to everything in life. You know, like there's an element of linear, and then there's an element of flow. And you have to find that magic space in between, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's an active surrender, you know. It's not just like, all right, I'm gonna sit in my bed and life is gonna come to me. It's not like that. It's like, you know, like what sticks to me is like, even before you had the real storyline in your head, you're still collecting footage, right? So like you're taking action, And then you're just like, listen, I'm gonna do what I can do now, and the rest is gonna come to me naturally. You know what I mean? Like the I'm gonna receive the download of the message just by sheer you know, by me taking action. It's gonna fucking shake something loose eventually, right? And I think
Exactly.
that's sort of what it is that we talk about with the idea of surrender, right? Because I think when it's not explained properly, it just people just think I'm supposed to keep going about life and
Yeah.
it's gonna happen.
We don't mean just like sit there and give up and
Right.
let things
Yeah.
magically happen, right?
Right.
There's
Right.
a
That's
there's an
like the
active
secret.
science
Yeah,
to
yeah.
it.
That's like a secret when they tell you manifesting is just like write some shit down on a piece of paper and think about it, and then you just go about your day, and next thing you know, it's gonna fucking you're gonna check for $1 million. It's like there's
Yeah.
a whole process of taking action, and belief obviously is a part of it, but like the literal, thing is you're going after things, but you're not being so rigid in it. You're understanding that what is unknown will eventually present itself as a result of you just fucking trying and trial and error and putting yourself out there and going for it. And I think that's the sort of beauty to the creation process and the idea of surrender. And how long actually I want to get this is popping in my head. How long has this project been going on?
A year and a half now? Well, a
So a
year.
year.
Yeah, a year and what are we? A year and 3 months.
I mean, that's a substantial amount of time to not have a tangible thing in your hand at this point necessarily, right? And
Yeah.
I think that is also a part of the discipline that it takes to bring ideas to life is no because what was your by the way, what was your projected timeline, just out of curiosity? Did you think it'd be quicker than this?
Listen,
Yeah.
when I thought that it was a short,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that this was going to be done. Like we filmed in January of 2023, and I thought by like May I would have a
Right.
short ready because I could do a short in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
time. And this is a lot of the a lot of the like butting heads that me and my brother would have because he's a very like, yo, like let's stay on schedule, this and this and that. And then I would be like, yep, nope, that's not happening.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
the process needs more time, or like it's not coming to me, or I need to step away from it. Because you gotta remember, I'm not telling your story. I'm not telling someone else's story. I'm looking at myself cry
Mhm.
on camera. I'm looking at
Yeah.
myself embrace my father for the first time in 26 years and watching
Right.
him cry and fall to his knees. And like it's a lot. And it's like every time I thought about, oh my God, I have to sit here and have a 6-hour editing session with my
Yeah.
editor, it was daunting, you know what I'm saying? And it takes a lot of me balancing my emotions as well to be able to put this story together,
Mhm.
um, process my emotions, and also stay in a place where I can subjectively look at the project
Yeah. Yeah.
and as a consumer. So it's been challenging. And then the longer the footage gets, right? This is my first time doing something that's an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So when you're filming and when you look at a film in these programs like DaVinci Resolve, which is where we're editing, right? When it's like 5 minutes, whatever, it's a couple little colors or whatever lines. But think
Yeah.
about this timeline of like little itty bitty micro little pieces of like
Mhm.
different colors. And every time you say, Dramos interviews need to come before Eliana's interview,
Mhm.
you have to disconnect the entire timeline and move
Mhm.
shit around and pray to God that you didn't like delete something or that
Yeah.
your timeline is there. It's nerve wracking. And I've been doing it remote. So I've been doing it on this 13-inch screen,
Yeah.
Mac Pro, Zoom with my editor in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Um, so we're flying him out for this final edit to get it finalized because the cut is done. Now we're just embellishing, and making it look
Sure.
pretty. But it's it's been wild, yo. It's been wild, and it also brought up a lot of things that I didn't know I needed to heal through.
Mm.
So it's also been a healing journey, not just for me, but for my father, for my siblings. I don't think we realize what exactly happened in DR until months later. And
Yeah.
I also don't think we realize that like our sense of identity kind of changed because for so long you're like this kid whose dad is in jail and and it's
Yeah.
part of your identity and no, well he's here and he is he is wanting to reintegrate, and he's calling you every day and sending you the TikToks on WhatsApp and sending you all the weird Cristiano songs and
Yeah.
WhatsApp. So you kind of have to like re-figure out who you are, because this wound is now supposed to be closed, or it's supposed to be in the process of closing. And some of us are more comfortable being wounded than being healed. So that was happening too at the same time that my actual career took a huge shift. Another example of surrendering is like, I modeled for years, I acted for years, I did tons of commercials, lots of modeling, print stuff. All of a sudden it just stopped working. And then I got offered this job as a producer. And do you think that when they were like, hey, we want you to produce these 2 TV shows, that I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. I've done that before. Hell no. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to figure it out. And then they offered me a salary job as a showrunner. So they wanted me to completely take over the pillar. So an interesting thing that happened that I didn't know was going to happen was that, you know, my life went from, oh, I did a modeling gig here, I can live off of it for 2 months. Oh, I did a commercial here, I can live off of it for 2 months. So now I'm working 40-something hours a week using the same muscle that I have to use to make this film. I'm using that same muscle to cut these episodes and direct and produce these episodes at work. So the level of exhaustion that I was experiencing, I'm just kind of coming out of that, because it's a lot of splitting your brain in 10 million different, you know, directions. And it did affect my health to the point where I ended up having to go to the hospital, and like things were diagnosed, and now I'm on a wellness journey, and I've had to like take weight off, and I've had to reassess how I eat, and I've had to reassess how I take care of myself, and how I, you know, feed inflammation in my body because of the stress. So filmmaking is not just filmmaking. Ava DuVernay said it in her new masterclass. She's like, you are the director of your life. Like when you choose to make a film, when you are a director, it's literally like, it's kind of like a condensed fast track of life. You know, all of it, figuring things out, you know, honoring your vision, managing egos and relationships, managing money, you know, everything that you have to do in your life, you're doing that in a very incubated process with filmmaking. And it can be very emotional. And then to be a good filmmaker, you got to be vulnerable. So you're throwing yourself into this like emotional journey of unknowns. You only have so much control of it. And then it requires you to be vulnerable. So I don't know why I chose this, but I always say it's so weird. But I absolutely love it. I love the process, and it's and now I'm to the point where I can say, you know what, Eliana, you're actually really good at this. You know, and you should take ownership of that. You're a really great producer. You're a really great, like, you know, blossoming director and filmmaker. And I'm just now giving myself permission to be like, you know what, yeah, I am. And I can do these things. And when bigger opportunities come, I'll be ready, because I've done it all with no budget, you know.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to believe, like,
100%. That's like that sometimes that's the only thing that's getting you through, is that little belief that you got, you know what I mean? Because it sometimes the outside world isn't always going to see what the fuck you see, so they have a hard time believing in what it is that you're creating and what you're crafting. And you have to be your own biggest fan at times to get through some of those more difficult moments. I mean, there's 2 things I want to touch on: the vulnerability thing for sure. But before I get to that, you had just talking about, like, it's mentally exhausting is what you're talking about, this whole process, right? It's like it's a different kind of tired, you know. It takes a lot of brain power to be sitting there meticulously looking at things, and you know, racking your brain about what's the best shot or where this goes, blah blah blah, like all these little nuances of things. And I think when a project like this one, which is incredibly overwhelming because of what's involved in it, it's easy to talk yourself out of it even after you've done so much of the work already, right? Especially when you're feeling tired, or when you're past what, the time period you thought it was going to be. And then there's also the other side of it where your brain is actually right. You do need to take a break, for your own health and things like that. And I think that that's another really difficult balancing act, to know what is sort of maybe self-sabotage speaking, or what is legitimately your mind telling you what would be healthiest for you. And I think, myself included, so many creative people have trouble delegating, or deciphering which is the actual right voice that they should be listening to, like which is actually trying to help them, or which is them just sabotaging them from actually achieving their greatness, because this is really challenging. I'm curious for
Yeah.
you if you have any insight on how you figure out what is the proper voice to be listening to in your mind.
Oof, that's a good question, Trauma. I can tell you that because of the stressors around this project, because of some of the relationship stressors around this project,
Mhm.
there were several times where I was gonna be like, I'm not doing this. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Sure.
Um, and and then there was a time where life was like, sit your ass down.
Yeah.
And I think the way that I try to do, I'm still learning, the way that I try to differentiate the two is that one is scarcity based. And you can tell because it spikes your nervous system.
Mm.
It puts you in a place where you start to only see the negative, where you start to you start to almost like resent the what you're creating. Like it's a weird shift of
Yeah.
energy. So I always
Yeah.
I always try to say like, is this? I'm like, nah, this is some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is fear, this is scarcity showing up, this is nervousness showing up, and so I when I can identify it, for me, journaling is my thing where I allow myself
Mm.
to not necessarily, I don't even call it journaling, I call it dump writing.
Yeah.
So any of those negative, I just allow myself to put them onto the paper, right? To
Mhm.
get rid of
Mhm.
them, whatever the thoughts are, whatever those doubts are. You just got to get them out of your head. I have a good friend that once told me, like, so like 90% of anxiety is in the head.
Mm.
And so the number one thing you have to do is drop to your body. And so
Mm.
simple things like shocking your system, like putting your hands under cold water. That's why tapping really works, because it takes you out of here and it puts you into like, other sensations. Going for a
Mhm.
walk. There have been days where I wake up and all I see and feel is negative
Mhm. Mhm.
about the project that I'm
Yeah.
devoting my life, and I
Right.
have to go and recalibrate and reset. And that's how I know. I'm like, this is not me. And
Mhm.
this doesn't feel authentic to my original intent with this project. So you have to have that self-awareness. I try to always be self-aware in that way. Um, and then the other way that it happened was legit, like I put on so much weight. I was so, and not that that matters, but it was like in a small amount of time, like my
Yeah.
body kind of blew up. My stomach got really big. I started having a lot of issues, like women's health issues. Like I stopped eating. Like it was weird. Like I wasn't big because I was overeating. I like wasn't eating. And I didn't
Mm.
realize that my anxiety was showing up in me skipping meals, you
Wow.
know? And it's a form of anxiety that shows up. And I'm not the anxious person that's gonna like get nervous in front of people, whatever. I guess I'm the anxious person that's just not gonna eat. It's
Right.
like my body's way of like, hiding, but also
Yeah.
dealing with stress, because everything about my life is I can't necessarily show it all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Um, so when that happened, and I ended up in the hospital, and then I met this doctor through my show, and she was
Mm.
like, something sounds off. You should come see me. And then in a month, she did tests that like nobody had done my entire life, and I ended up finding out I had like stage 4 endometriosis, which is
Mm.
like, I'm like, first of all, I know that comes in stages,
Mhm.
and and it was like really, really affecting my life. And then I didn't know that some of the foods that I love to eat that aren't necessarily bad foods, but they are horrible, like inflammatory agents.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's where my collaboration with Masi Arias came in, where I'm collaborating with her now to be the transformation of her like food supplements and true training, because you know, a lot of times we don't realize that what we're putting in our body is affecting us mentally. It's affecting our anxiety. It's affecting our creativity, and it's all sourced in our food and the way that we address nutrition. You know, so I had to do a complete, like, literally this was like in November where my body hit rock bottom. Like, it literally hit rock bottom. Like, my visceral fat was out of control. My cholesterol got out of control. It was hard to get out of bed. Physically, it was hard for me to do things. I was exhausted beyond measure. So that's when I know, you know, like, those are signs that I'm like, oh, okay. And then to have something like a diagnosis of something like that, I was just kind of like, okay, so this is real. And I need to find balance, you know, and I need to understand that, like, these stories ain't gonna get told if I'm dead. So, you know, we gotta take care of ourselves in a better way. So also, you know, because there's a lot of people, and especially us people of color, like, we are doers, and we're going to keep doing it, and we're going to keep doing and avoiding and doing, you know, and unfortunately right now there's an epidemic with a lot of Black and Latino people dying of just like shit that you wouldn't think of, like cardiac arrest and like getting diabetes and all this stuff. So I feel like God really gave me a wake-up call and a chance to be like, hey, I want you to fulfill this purpose, but I need you to take care of yourself first. And so that's when I knew it wasn't just me being like lazy or tired or procrastinating, because that's a thing, y'all. You know, but then I also found out that procrastination is a trauma response, you know. And so I'm still working to achieve balance. But I think once I feel that it's coming from scarcity and fear, I can then say, okay, this is not me per se. This is everything around me telling me, you're not good enough. You can't do this. Who do you think you are? What makes you think you can do this? You know? And everybody goes through that. You just have to, I always tell people, like, you know, we spend so much time learning things outside of ourselves. Like, we really have to spend time learning ourselves. If we take the greatest project you will ever take on, the greatest anything you will ever do is learning yourself. And I think that if more of us went in and studied ourselves, then the faster we can be like, Eliana, you're operating in scarcity. Like, go for a walk, go do something you love, or go do something the 10-year-old you love, go paint in a coloring book, or watch Rocky IV, or whatever you gotta do to get you out of your funk, go do that. But having that self-awareness is key, because life can draw you in a lot of different directions, and next thing you know, you're not even like living your own life. You're just like living to please all of these external things that have nothing to do with what you're actually here for.
No, absolutely. And also it's like, you know, you have to look at yourself like an operating system, right? And what is going to achieve the best results in said operating system, right? And that is awareness and knowing yourself. Like, I've been figuring this out even like very recently, where I have like a to-do list, and I'm like, by the time Thursday hits, I'm exhausted from the week. So me scheduling difficult things on Thursdays and Fridays is setting myself up for disaster, because I'm tired, I'm not giving it my best effort, or I end up not even checking it off the to-do list, and then I'm beating myself up because I didn't finish the to-do list, right? Where now it's like, I know my best days are Monday, Tuesday, schedule the hard shit at the beginning of the week, so therefore I get it over and done with, and I'm setting myself up for when I am tired, when I am beat up by the week, I have an easy slate of things that can ease me down, and I'm then operating far happier because I got the important stuff done first, you know, and the rest of the stuff is just little shit that's not really going to affect me, you know. But that's all coming from like taking notes on, okay, how am I feeling right now? What is actually working? What is not working? Right? Where can I improve upon, what I'm already doing? And that is awareness and your health and all that stuff. Like for me, I don't sacrifice my sleep for nobody. Like that's those are non-negotiables for me. Before I would sleep 2 hours and be like, and think I was cool because I was burning the candle like that. It's like,
Same.
like that's nothing to be proud of.
Yeah.
I'm not operating at my best self. I'm destroying my body. That is the thing I need to actually be able to live this life that I'm hoping to get to live. And that's all important to be mindful of. So I want to, if anybody has any questions or comments, you can start getting that mentally prepared. But I do want to just end on the idea of vulnerability. Like, I'd love to hear quickly just you, whatever messaging you had to tell yourself to be okay with being vulnerable, particularly on camera, talking about family shit that is so taboo in general, right? And being able to open yourself up in that way, knowing that it's gonna be great for the film, but also probably it's gonna be a really amazing way for you to find healing as well.
Yeah. I remember telling myself when I sat down in front of the camera, I was the last one to do the interviews. I remember saying, if this wasn't meant to happen, you wouldn't be here.
Mm.
And I think like that gave me just like a security of like so much had happened to get me to that point where I was sitting in front of the camera and I would open up about my pain and I would cry in front of people,
Mhm.
you know. So it was a lot of it was that if this isn't meant to happen, you wouldn't be here. If you were not meant to do this, you wouldn't have these skills. If
Right.
you were not meant to do this, your friends wouldn't have said yes and met you in Dominican Republic, you know.
Mhm.
So I kind of had this inner dialogue of this is meant to happen. And this is not only for us, this is going to be for other families as well.
Mm.
And it's also for me personally to kind of, I don't want to say prove, but to be able to say like, to affirm, yeah, I'm meant to do this.
Mhm.
So my vulnerability my ability to be vulnerable came from giving myself that security that nobody else could give me. So many people were like,
Mhm.
oh, you're gonna do great. Oh, it's gonna be fine. Oh, this and this and that, da 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 da. But I needed to be the one. And to be honest, I wasn't speaking to me per se, to the 38-year-old me.
Mhm.
I was really speaking to the 10-year-old me.
Mm.
The 10 to 12-year-old me who lost her father, who had to go through that pain, because it's different when that happens when you're 2, 3, 4 years old than when you
Mhm.
are in your teenage years, formed years, when you have established a relationship with your parent where you are a total daddy's girl and every summer you're looking
Mhm.
forward to go to DR and spend time with your dad. So
Mhm.
I had to comfort her so that I could be vulnerable because I was exposing her. I wasn't necessarily exposing me right now.
Mhm.
So a lot of that uh, vulnerability came from being honest with that version of myself, giving her security, but also knowing that once I did that, she was going to feel so much better.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I've done like past self meditations or whatever, where you kind of see yourself, you see the younger versions of yourself. And
Mhm.
I remember seeing that version of me, that 10 to 13-year-old version of me. Something happened to her, right? And I know exactly what it is and where it's rooted
Mhm.
in. And she wasn't dancing and she wasn't like playing with her
Mhm.
coloring books, and she was not the Eliana that that I remember her being. And it's a lot of times it is this like unhealed child wound.
Mhm.
So I remember sitting in that chair at my grandma's land in Dominican Republic being like, we're going to be vulnerable not just to heal ourselves, but to heal our past selves and to also heal the generations coming. Because when you heal,
Mm.
you're not just healing yourself, you're kind of setting a new path for the lineage that's coming after you.
Mm.
So I just kind
Mm.
of had to give myself the security that it was okay for me to be open and
Yeah.
vulnerable. And I'm still nervous. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I wrote
Sure.
really emotional ballads for the song. No, people really haven't seen the film publicly. I'm just now starting to sprinkle the crowdfund me which has a teaser in the crowdfunding video, and I'm still kind of like, oh my God, people are gonna see me like a mess, I'm bawling, like I don't look well. I don't look well in the documentary. You can tell that I am stressed. Like it's like visibly noticeable. But I was just like, this is what it is, you know? And after you create something like that, everything else is fun and games.
No, it's freeing, you know, and I think that's what, as scary as it is to be vulnerable, it's like the more you do it, the like lighter you feel, you know, and there's something really beautiful about it. I had my parents on my podcast this last week, and I was so nervous. Like it was the second time I had them on, but like this one got really deep, and I remember after I felt like lighter. I just felt like good. I felt like I had cried in front of my parents for the first time in God knows how long. And I remember like feeling so grateful for just having released that. Like that was held up inside of me for so long, you know. And you know, and then you think about the greater good. It's like hopefully this touches somebody else and you know, leaves them with some sort of impact, you know. And I think that's like something I've read about a lot, is like the idea of, for human beings to really be happy, we have to be living for something bigger than ourselves, you know. That's real fulfillment at the end of the day, which is just a beautiful thing. That's what
art.
that
I
is.
think a lot of people get caught up in like, art is pretty, art is this, art is that. Honey, art started because of a necessity to heal and to communicate, and you know what I'm saying, first it then became a source of entertainment. But it's like, you know, what I'm creating is art at its most rawest, vulnerable, you know, face.
But that's the most freeing,
so,
you know, that's like, that's really, you know, the beauty of life is exposing yourself in that way, you know, and holding on to less and less, which is just amazing. So I appreciate you sharing all this and coming on here. Like I feel great about it. I feel like I always love hearing other people's thought processes in these really difficult moments and like the ups and downs of it all. And I also think it's comforting to know you're not alone in that journey, right? That we're all like, it seems like on Instagram.
And listen,
it seems on Instagram where you're like, oh, look, they're doing that, they're doing this, but like, you know, the behind the scenes is a hot mess as well.
The tears, like the tears, the arguments, the fights, the doubt, oh my God, it has been a lot, you know. The last 3 years have been a lot, you know. So so yeah, no, I appreciate getting an opportunity to just like share and just like talk and communicate with other people that are also just kind of searching for like, how do we navigate life in a way that like resonates with like authenticity and purpose, but also recognizing the self-work that needs to happen. It's I don't know, I'm just grateful. I'm like super grateful that I made it through the worst part of it. And then now I can sit here and hopefully help others, or just like share insight, you know, and hopefully inspire others to just tell their stories, you know, in whatever way that is. Like, it doesn't have to be a feature-length documentary. It can be anything. But if you're being called to it, probably means you got to do it in some way, shape, or form. And don't worry about, it's not your job to worry about the how. It's your job to like put one foot in front of the other and do it. The how, that's what you surrender. You just kind of like go with the flow and things will fall in place, you know?
That's beautiful. That's beautifully said. I appreciate that. That's a good way to end it. I'm gonna open it up if anybody has any comments, questions, concerns, while we have Eliana on here.
Yes. Do you have any concerns?
Feel free to chime in before we wrap things up. Let us know.
Ask a Gringo.
I have a question.
Yeah, I said,
go ahead, Brent.
If you're thinking about it, ask the question, please. Like, these opportunities don't happen often. And thank you, Eliana, for like being on too. Like, from the moment I heard her talk about this story, like I was here. It was like a we all grow conversation, right?
Oh God,
like, maybe like an office hours or something. I'm like with my tissues, because like I've shared with Dramos, like at this point, Dramos and I have seen each other almost every week. And so I laughed when he said, like, I do the hardest stuff at the beginning. I'm like, I meet with him 5:30 a.m. Pacific time Monday morning. So I'm the hardest thing to deal with. Nah, but like I've been meeting him and it's virtual, right? We've never met in person, but I've shared with him details of like how when you told that story, it opened up and started helping me heal because I have a family member who I looked up as like a male role model in my life, and my relationship has been with him more with him in prison than ever in person, right? So when you opened up about the story, I was like, oh my God, somebody else that looks like me that like I understand, like you're in LA, I'm from LA, and all of this
Mhm.
stuff, and I'm like, and she's living it, and like how, because we just got word too that he might be up for coming out, and I'm like, how is this going to integrate back into our,
Remember you saying it.
how does this work? Like, and now I know that it's just going to be what you said, right? And that's kind of what I'm expecting, and that's why I hang around these communities where like when life be lifing, they're like, you're good. The sky's not falling.
Mhm.
Like I've had calls with dramas where I was like, I can't do this. I started the 9 to 5, even though it's something I love and that I'm passionate about, right? Like the scarcity comes up and I'm like, oh no, right? But when I told Drama, was like, I can't do this, he like let me vent it out and like, okay, like this is entrepreneurship and like how it is, and I understand that it's a lot, and like I don't even have kids, so I don't know how you're doing, but like I'm here and like I'm your partner, and like drop some stuff on me when it's too heavy on you. And like the way he explained it and made that community, I was like, I do got this, and now like when opportunities come up and people,
Mhm.
I'm always in like we all girl stuff when I can be, and I'm always like, and she and her and like let's and blah blah blah, because I'm like, we're here, like it is our time to shine as people of color. Like I was showing my husband your crowdfunding, right? Because I was like, I told you,
Mhm.
point is waiting for some cash to come in. And I was like, look, you see how everyone started like $25, 20, 150, like it's not big amount, but there's a lot of fucking us. So if a lot of us do a little bit, it goes a long way. And my husband was like, yeah,
Yeah.
like we're up. Like
Oh, that's
I
what
got
made me
him
cry.
invested
I'm
in like
like,
Bloomy and like other things like this, because I'm like, these are our people telling our stories. How the fuck can we not support? So thank you, Eliana, for coming on. And if somebody has a question, ask it, because these
please, I'm open. It was very hard for me to put out that crowdfunding. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm also learning how to ask for more help. I'm a super collaborative person. But I feel like if I'm gonna ask you to do something for me or with me, like I feel like I have to be able to give something in return. So whether it's like get you a job or get you something that's paid or whatever, like I'm starting to embrace more the idea of like, no, I do things for people because I want to help. Like, and there's people out there that want to do stuff for me because they want to help. So just learning how to receive and ask for help has been and knowing that I don't have all the answers. Like I may have the vision, but I don't know everything, and I don't have
Sure.
all the answers. And it's a humbling experience because the world tells you, especially as a woman, as a Black woman, as a Latina woman, as a woman of color, it tells you that like if you're gonna put yourself out there and you're gonna take on the title of filmmaker, you better be a damn good filmmaker, And I always, for a long time, I was like, man, it's really audacious of me to like put producer, filmmaker, on my resume. But then I'm like, when I look back, I'm like, I got like 15 mini documentaries under me. I'm a whole ass producer of like 2 TV shows. I have 3 short films. Like, of course I'm a filmmaker. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just the world tells you otherwise. So thank you for that, Bren, because yeah, we need to hear it.
I love it. So before we wrap anything up, anybody have any questions or anything like that they wanna throw in there? It's all good if you don't want to put anyone in the spot, but if you did, now would be the time.
I'll throw one in the pot.
Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
please.
Hey
Jane.
guys, good evening and nice to meet
Hi.
you, Eliana. Thank you for sharing your journey. I went and checked out your IG page when Bryn shared this last week, and I saw lots of like serendipitous alignment. And so I appreciate you sharing something that is so beautiful, transparent, and vulnerable. And I'm all in. Like obviously I haven't seen it yet, but I'm fully invested. So and kudos to Dramos setting this up in terms of at the very beginning when he, in his interview style that I've learned after us being on this journey together, of So tell me about the qualifications, knowing damn well this group is very much like, fuck the qualifications, we're going for it. So, but I appreciate you reiterating that, to verbalize it and to, actualize it for this group. So one of the things that I'm thinking through and just listening to kind of everything that you said about the, if it wasn't meant to be, I wouldn't be here. Very much aligns with, I think I shared with this group, like one of my cards, my mantras, and some of the stuff that I have is, what I seek is seeking me. And that's a big journey for kind of where I feel like this group is for what's next. And I think that when we talk about that slow down to speed up, when we feel like we've achieved, this big weight being lifted, and that you have the next wave where this is being introduced. So that's going to take you through a different journey. But a lot of the legwork, the tears, all the things that you described are essentially behind you because you kept going to go through. When you get to this point in terms of project, I'm also a project manager with a lot of other fucking transferable skills. So all the things we're just hitting, I was like, yep, got it. Different industries, but where do you see yourself when you're in this moment of reflection? And are you someone that is automatically thinking about what's next for the bigger picture that this is for the impact for your culture, for your family, for you? Or are you taking the moment as well to sit, receive, and be able to embrace exactly where you are in the journey and finding that balance? How do you manage that for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, first of all, I'm glad that everything resonates with you. That's why I love doing what I do, because I know there's other women out there that are feeling the same. So thank you for sharing that. I I have been in this place of, okay, I have worked myself to the bone, right? I have made really cool things happen, unlimited resources. I also have, took on a really cool job. But what I do at LATV as a showrunner producer is probably like 6 different roles at a bigger studio. So I've been in kind of like my sit and reflect era. And what keeps coming up for me is, how can you continue doing this thing that you love to do in a way that isn't going to work you to the bone? So how do you work smarter? And what I realized is that since I was a child, since I was that chubby girl in Puerto Rico that was like, I'm going to be in a dance school, I'm going to be on dance line. And they were like, you too fat, you got to lose weight, you can't be in this dance school. And I would go and make my own dances and like win the trophy, I've always just like done it all myself. Like I've always been like this, like, oh, you tell me I can't do it, I'm gonna learn every single part of the process, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make it work. So I think like I'm done with that. Like I've proven that. I'm like, what does it look like now? Even at work at LATV, I've just been like, you know what? I want to hire a junior producer, even if it's 20 hours a week. I'm hiring, instead of 1 PA for my production days, I'm hiring 2 PAs. And then I'm just making sure that when I hire, I'm hiring, within like Black Latino communities, because that's important to me, and that's where the culture and the impact part comes into my work. Because I'm really passionate about us getting opportunities, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera, because that's where the control and the impact is. And what does it look like when I say, okay, I'm going to do this, but then I'm going to hire people that are really great at what they do, so that then we can build the ecosystem, of not only opportunities, but also I can then just remain at a level where I can make sure the vision comes through, but then people that love to do what they do are doing what they do, and they're getting paid for it. So rather than like me getting the $4,000 and the $5,000-$10,000 for whatever gig it might be, like maybe I'll lose 3-4 G's, but I'm hiring other people that love to do what they do, and I'm paying them, and we're building an ecosystem which alleviates their stress financially and alleviates my stress of having to do it all. So I'm starting to think more of like, what does exponential growth look like? And what does working smart versus hard look like? And there's always going to be an element of hard working, obviously, in filmmaking and in the industry. But then, like, what does it look like to find opportunities or investors so that there's bigger budgets? so that I don't have to be the line producer, the editor, the producer, the filmmaker, the editor, the director, the writer. And when you start to look at it, when you start to build those ecosystems, then you realize how these really big things that we love to see, when you look at these crews, they are massive. Like there's someone that literally is just in charge of like taking your microphone off. That's a whole ass job. You know what I'm saying? Like there's someone in charge of literally just making sure that that craft table has water bottles on it at all times. That's a whole ass job. So I'm starting to look into that. What does exponential growth look like for me, and how can I alleviate some of the stress by building a team and building an ecosystem of people that love to do what they do and that just want to create together, and how can we get paid for it? I'm also trying to figure out, how do I make money while I sleep? Okay, if it's a product, if it's, that's not OnlyFans, like how do I make money when I sleep? How do I wake up to a couple more G's? Because I do think that it's a scam. I feel like the way we're taught capitalism, the way we're taught, our relationship with money and our relationship with work and all of that, like it's crazy. And the thing about me is that I'm my business. So a lot of times my money comes in from me physically having to be places, or me having to actually physically do things. And I want to get paid for like sitting on a beach somewhere. So like, what does that look like? I hope that answers your question. I don't know.
No, it did. I think that's further alignment for Drums doesn't have to be lonely at the top. And also I think I'm reading Vivian too, Rich AF is I'm usually read more fiction to kind of like escape, but that is one of the ones when we talk about like the differences of working smarter versus harder, exponential compounding, investing, and that definitely seems to be the next step in just how to make money while we sleep. So no, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, girl, we deserve it.
Absolutely. I think if anybody else had anything, let me know. If not, we'll wrap things up. I appreciate you, Eliana, for lending us your time and your voice to give everybody some much needed inspiration this evening. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all. Hopefully, once this film is out and we'll do a film festival run. We'll do some screenings. So if people are in LA, they can come check it out. We'll probably do one in New York as well.
Love it.
But yeah, and then there's more down the pipeline. So
man, big shout out to Eliana for being a part of that conversation. I hope y'all got something out of it. I really felt it was a special one. So big shout out to her for hopping on here. Let's tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for Conclusion Stew.
All right, so I know that we had a nice lengthy conversation there, so I'll try to keep this short. But I think, when I hear back that conversation, and even in the moment when we were having it, the main thing that really came to my mind that like stood out to me that as really special, obviously it all is special, but like the one thing that really like I honed in on, it was the idea of just starting before you're even ready. I think a lot of us, myself included, are perfectionists, and I even, recently like had gotten hit up by somebody who wanted some advice on starting a podcast, and like they were falling into the same trap that most of us do. They've wanted to do this for a long time, but like they want it to be so legit and they want it to look a certain way and sound all this different stuff. And it's like, yeah, all of that is amazing, but you've been stewing on this idea for so long now, and you're not getting anywhere with it. You're not progressing in anywhere, in sort of any way of bringing it to life, because you're so concerned with all of the other factors about it, like the way it looks, or do you like the name? What about the concept? All these different things. Like a lot of that stuff is really going to work itself out when you begin the process, right? But you're not going to know or have those answers or grow and learn and get to a place that you're happy with. All of that isn't going to come until you actually start putting yourself out there and you actually go all in on the project, right? A lot of those questions will be answered as you go. And I think that is the one thing that's like a commonality that so many people fall into that trap, right? And I've been there before as well, for various things. But what I will say is, for me, when I think about my life, my career, like, there's a lot of different things that I think are contributing factors as to why I've been able to do some of the things that I've been able to, get done. But for the most part, man, it really is just like, I don't live in a place of overthinking an idea. And by the way, this can get me in trouble at times, right? Where I take on too much, or I enroll other people into a project before I have it fully fleshed out, and then I realize I'm not really that into the project, and now I've kind of wasted somebody's time, unfortunately, right? Those are the unfortunate parts about it. But on the other side of it, me diving in head first without really thinking about it is the reason why I've been able to create so many different things and create so many different opportunities. And it feels like I'm always on the verge of the next thing, and I'm always sort of advancing little by little. But it's because I don't allow myself to get stuck too much in the analysis paralysis mode, where I'm just overanalyzing, overthinking, right? Even this podcast, Life as a Gringo, guys, this was my second, like, when I had to pitch myself to the Cultura podcast network, Life as a Gringo was not even the priority for me at the time. Life as a Gringo was gonna be a book idea. I had a whole other podcast idea that I thought was the idea. And Life as a Gringo, I kind of just kept in the back of my pocket in case they didn't love that other idea. So I really hadn't fleshed it out completely. I had the general concept, of course, but like, it wasn't something that I overthought too much. I was there in the meeting, and, I pitched the first idea and they didn't love it. And it was kind of like, oh, I have this other idea as well. And that ironically was the one that they ended up loving. And obviously here we are 3 seasons later. But again, it's because I didn't overanalyze it. I didn't stop and have to ask every single person I know what they thought of the name or the concept. And of course, like, I had people in my life where I might run it by, but I didn't allow their opinion, or I didn't allow the fact that I hadn't gone through that process completely to slow me down or to stop me from pitching it, essentially, right? And that's why we've been able to move the way we have. And of course, there have been so many things I've had to figure out along the way because I didn't overplan. But with that said, it's worked out very well for me, right? And I think that's what holds so many people back, right? Even when she was talking about, like, the one angle, the one camera angle, the shot that was like the best shot of the documentary ended up being one that they didn't plan on. It literally was just, I don't know if it was her assistant or somebody that was on set with her, filming from their iPhone, who just randomly was just capturing the moment and ended up filming the best angle of, like, this moment of them embracing their father as he came home from prison. And that's life. You can only plan but so much, but the magic oftentimes is in what happens once you're on the path, once you're walking in your journey. And you have to embrace it and be open to it and understand that as long as you're putting yourself out there and you're doing the work and you're moving towards your intended goal, magic is going to find you in some way, shape, or form along the way, even if it's not exactly how you intended it or planned it, right? But you have to get past the fear that holds you back from actually, taking a step on your path, right? It's like, you want to, run a marathon. That's your goal, but you literally never walk out of your front door. How are you supposed to properly, train for the marathon or get ready? I mean, shit, you can't even run the marathon if you don't actually leave from your front door, right? You have to actually go to a location. And that's what a lot of us are doing. We're like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, but we're never actually stepping out of the house. Sometimes literally, this time figuratively is what I'm talking about. That's what we do when we overplan, overanalyze. It doesn't have to be perfect. I know we live in an internet era where it feels like everybody's watching everything you're doing and they're going to be judging it right away. And maybe there are going to be some people who do it. But also, who gives a fuck about those people, right? At the end of the day, there are so many things on your journey and in the creative process that can only happen once you're actually knee deep in it. right? You don't know all the questions, all the problems that are going to arise. You can't plan for everything. A lot of it is on the job training, and you're only going to get it when you actually go and do the thing you've been wanting to do. And that's, to me, the most powerful piece of advice I could give to anybody, you know, is like, if you have an idea, just start doing it. Don't overthink it. You know, plan to the best of your ability, but just start doing it. And in the process of you starting to do it, you're going to learn, you're going to get better, you're going to refine. And who cares if the world, quote unquote, is watching via social media? Most people are too afraid to even get started, so you have a leg up on them. That would be my greatest piece of advice. I'm going to stop there. I could have gone we could do another hour of me just talking about that. But that to me is the best thing I always can tell people. And I love that Eliana's story was that, you know, start before you're ready. She had never made a documentary film before. They didn't have it all figured out, but she was like, fuck it, we're just going to do this, and I'm going to somehow, some way pull it together in the next, I don't know however long she had. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like a very short period of time to pull together this documentary before her father was being released, right? And you just do it. You just have to do it. So that's my takeaway for today's show. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I know it was incredibly inspiring for me in the moment, and I just love being able to connect with people like her, who are really pushing themselves to do amazing things and being honest about their journey and the struggles, and as a result are being an inspiration to all of us. So just love it. Shout out to her for being so damn vulnerable. What a vulnerable story to share, but that's the way we make the greatest impact. When we humanize ourselves and our experiences and are unafraid to be vulnerable, and in being vulnerable, we're giving others the permission to be vulnerable themselves. I think that's the beauty of all this stuff as well. That's a whole other conversation I can get into as well, where the more you give to yourself, the more you give the world of yourself. Is that what I'm saying? The more of yourself you give to the world, there we go. I think the more you're going to get back. And I don't mean that just in terms of like attention or monetary stuff. I mean also your soul is going to be filled, right? Because the lives you're going to touch as a result of being that giving person, it's all going to come back tenfold for you. That's the last thing I'll say. Now, again, if you want to be a part of the new Just Be Social Club, DM me your email at DJ Dramos on Instagram, or you can email Brenda at mindofayounglord.com. I'll leave that link in the show notes, but whatever's easier for you, you could send us your email, say you want to be added to the waiting list for the Just Be Social Club, and once it opens up, we'll send it out to you so you can go ahead and click it and join. Again, this is our mastermind group, bunch of like-minded people from the community meeting up together, all with the purpose of personal growth and inspiring and connecting and building genuine community with one another, where we can, be interacting and sharing our work, our lives, and helping build each other up in the process. So that's the goal of the Just Be Social Club. And I think that's it. JustBe.nyc if you want to pick up some of the BU merch that we just dropped. Again, I'm really excited. It's beautiful, like embroidered sweaters. The hats are really dope. They say "be" on them. I've been wearing them a lot recently if you've been following my socials. And that's that. Thank y'all so much for the support. And I'll catch you, man, Thursday. We'll be Thursday back here as usual for our Thursday Trends episode. Until then, stay safe. We'll talk soon. Peace.